welcome Eli Sinner, Secretary General of this year's 20th Annual Mediterranean Model UN, for the panelist introduction.
Dear delegates, directors, and esteemed guests, I would like to welcome you all to the first ever MEDIMUN debate panel. Today we have joining us Ms. Sherry Holbrook, Mr. Mark Zapanowski, and Mr. Roorthon Wager, who is joining us online. I hope you can hear us.
I can.
While in the process of preparing for this session, we were brainstorming ways in which we could integrate our theme, adapting to today's tomorrow, diplomacy in a divided world, further into the conference, as well as give you guys, the delegates, the opportunity to take on a more interactive role, which is when we came up with the idea of a debate panel. Through having a first-hand insight into the perspectives of professionals in the field, as well as being able to witness how they approach complex issues in a debate environment, we hope that you will be able to take these important learnings into your own lives and potential careers in international relations and diplomacy. Now, I would like to extend my deepest gratitude and introduce our three panelists. Ms. Sherry Holbrook is a senior political affairs officer in the United Nations Good Office's mission in Cyprus, having served on the island or in New York, working on Cyprus and the region in a number of different capacities since 2009. She has more than 25 years of global experience advancing peace, human rights, and the rule of law, and is a specialist in the areas of post-conflict property claims, governance, and power sharing, international treaties, and federal systems. Ms. Holbrook's time at the United Nations began as a legal officer in the Office of Legal Affairs at the UN headquarters, and her work with the organization took her to a range of countries including Liberia, Ethiopia, Ghana, Thailand, Indonesia, and Lao PDR. Prior to moving to the United Nations, she served with the Commission for Real Property Claims of Displaced Persons and Refugees in Bosnia-Herzegovina as Director of the Legal Department, overseeing post-conflict property claims determination. Now on to our panelist, Mr. Roorthon Wager, who's joining us online. He is the founder and CEO of Wager Negotiation Institute, specializing in negotiation training, mediation, and conflict resolution. With over 25 years of experience as a lawyer, he has worked globally across diverse sectors, assisting organizations in overcoming complex challenges through collaboration and strategic negotiation. As an internationally certified mediator in Singapore, Dubai, UK, and Norway, he focuses his work on human-centered skills, combining neuroscience and communication techniques to achieve optimal results. Throughout his career, he has successfully facilitated negotiation strategies for multinational organizations, including companies in the oil and gas sector and pharmaceutical companies, as well as delivered keynotes and workshops on negotiation, conflict resolution, and influence, engaging audiences at the University of Cyprus and across Europe, the Middle East, and Africa. Moreover, Mr. Wager is the co-founder of Sports for Understanding, an NGO promoting cross-cultural understanding through sports. This brought him to move to Cyprus in 2015 to 2016. For outstanding contributions to negotiation education, he has been honored with the Corporate Vision Education and Training Award in 2023 and 2024. Ambassador Mark Zapanowski is a career diplomat, a civil servant, and a member of the Foreign Service. He joined the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in 2001 after graduating from the National School of Public Administration. He graduated cum laude in International Relations and National Security at the University of Warsaw. In addition, he has completed trainings and internships organized by academic and public administration institutes in Canada, Germany, India, Italy, and Singapore, among others. Since the beginning of his career, he has been dealing with issues relating to Poland's integration and membership in the European Union, among other things, preparing international meetings of the UKIE leadership and later representing the Foreign Ministry as an expert in meetings on public and cultural diplomacy. Following a long list of foreign postings, he received the diplomatic rank of Minister Counselor. Returning from a foreign assignment in 2010, he served as a deputy and director of the Bureau of Archives and Information Management, leading efforts to implement Poland's first electronic documents management system and reforming classified document workflows. In 2018, upon returning to Warsaw once again, he became deputy and later director of public and cultural diplomacy, overseeing major anniversaries like Poland's 100th independence and 50th 2021, he was appointed Director of Diplomatic Protocol, managing protocol services for high-level foreign visits and ensuring appropriate work conditions for the diplomats accredited to Poland. Our debate will be moderated by the Deputy Secretary General, Gabriel Georgiou. I now yield the floor to him.
Thank you, Eli. Hi guys, I'm Gabriel Georgiou, your Deputy Secretary General, and your moderator for today. I'm just going to take a couple of minutes to walk you through how this debate panel will work. So we begin by introducing three topics, which our three panelists will have the first opportunity to introduce their stance on, and then we'll move on into an impromptu debate between them. After we finish with the three topics, we'll be moving on to a Q&A where you yourselves will be able to ask questions, and we will be referring them on to our panelists. Thank you. So I would like to introduce our first topic of this afternoon, which is how populism spreads globally, with democracies becoming more susceptible to authoritarian influences. Mr. Wager, if we could please have your stance first.
Thank you. The sound was a little bit difficult to hear. Can you repeat the first topic? Can you hear me?
Of course, sorry, yeah. It is how populism spreads globally, with democracies becoming more susceptible to authoritarian influences. Sorry.
Okay. Thank you. First of all, congratulations to all of you that are present there today, and the work you are doing and the involvement you have in the Model UN is impressive. I remember that from school myself, and I had some friends of my kids that also have been involved, and it's so meaningful, the work you are doing. So I'm looking forward to taking this, to take part in this panel together with my esteemed colleagues. Thank you for the introduction. I'm not going to repeat anything from it, but I would like to highlight what I use as a philosophy and always guide my strategy in the work I'm doing. And that is a quote, and it goes like this: negotiation is not a combat. It's a collaboration towards common goals. An effort put in by two parties who will often meet again and work together many times and long after this agreement has been negotiated. And in today's polarized world, and in the topic you have raised here today, I will say that it's easy to lose the human touch. And that is something I do a training, what we call the power of nice. And that is the belief I use when I guide people, when I do trainings, when I do advising, and when I do mediation, is to remember the human touch behind every agreement, every conflict we are working on. So with that said, as an opening, I would like to say that in today's world, we need for adaptive diplomacy. Diplomacy in a divided world demands both agility and depth. And it's no longer about grand speeches alone. It's about listening. It's about reframing. It's about finding common grounds, even where divisions seems absolute. In my limited 2 minutes introduction, I would like to point back to a fictional character you might all know, Captain Jack Sparrow from the Pirates of the Caribbean. And he was a master strategist who often outsmarted his enemies through deception and quick thinking rather than brutal force. And his famous quote is this: "The problem is not the problem. The problem is your attitude about the problem." And that reflects his unorthodox yet effective approach to problem solving, something that I would like to highlight further when we're coming back later into the debate today, that align with the adaptive thinking we need to have with us when we are involved in conflicts, in negotiation, and in diplomacy in general. And it highlights the importance of the mindset we bring with us when we approach the other party. And I, on purpose, I try never to use the counterparty. I try to use the word the other party. And that could be, of course, of several. But that highlights the importance of the mindset over the circumstances, making it relevant to reference to a discussion on every negotiation and conflict resolution we are into. So that was how I wanted to try to start my part in these subjects. Back to you.
Thank you so much, and thank you also for your very kind words. It's an honor to have you as a panelist for our debate. Now moving on to Ms. Holbrook, if you could introduce your stance as well.
Just checking to see if Thank you to the organizers. Congratulations for this conference. It's an impressive group, and I'm very happy to be here today. I wanted to start by saying that I'm an international civil servant working for the United Nations. I'm not a politician, so there will be things that I will say in a certain way, but I'm very excited to hear your questions as well. I wanted to start by saying in the situation today in the world where there are really dire things happening, increased inequality, it causes a situation where people feel that they are being left behind. And if the question is about populism exactly appeals to those who feel that they are not listened to, that their voices aren't valued. It strives to appeal exactly to those ordinary people that somehow think that there are elite groups that are against them. I think at the same time, technology, as wonderful as it is and it changes our lives, can also be used for mis and disinformation and to spread untruths that can be very damaging. So thinking about how populism spreads and could perhaps be harmful. I think these types of challenges with mis and disinformation can be addressed, can be helped through strengthened cooperation, both at the local and the multilateral level. How about now? Better? Awesome. Should I go back? No. Yes? Okay. I was talking about technology, speaking of which, and how although it can change our lives for the better, it is also used for the spread of mis and disinformation. And so looking at populism and the ways that it can be damaging, I think we need to consider that as well. These challenges can be addressed by strengthening cooperation, establishing rules to safeguard the facts, and to counter hate speech as well. Finally, just for my opening statement, connecting diplomacy in a divided world, and with thanks to the first speaker, I absolutely agree on focusing on finding common ground. I wanted to mention the Pact for the Future that was adopted last year by the UN member states. It includes a number of goals, including a global digital compact that is the first global framework really to look at digital cooperation, AI, and really a commitment to make sure technology is for all and for everyone, and so that all of your voices can be heard in a way to make you feel less disenfranchised. Thank you.
Thank you so much. If we could now hear from Mr. Szymanowski.
Thank you very much, Secretary General. Thank you very much your colleagues responsible for the organization of these events. I'm very glad and I'm very honored to be here in front of this splendid audience. Thank you very much for this invitation. It was very interesting introductions which were provided by you and a colleague from Norway. I fully agree with this, what was said before. There are different perceptions, I think different prospects of this, how to tackle with the populism. But what I wanted to add to this, which were made in information which were disseminated during the speeches of my colleagues, that when we are talking about the populism, let me treat this more from the practical point of view, because I'm a diplomat, I'm dealing with this foreign policy and with the diplomacy for the last 25 years, and of course there were different phenomena which appeared on an international stage and also on the political stages of the internal countries where I used to work for. I used to work in Italy, and I used to work in Germany, and used to work in Brussels. Of course, in all of these countries, they are all located in Europe, but the phenomenon of populism were visible in a more visible way or less visible way. But I think that the sign of our time now is this, that the populism is becoming more and more influential and more and more visible. And I think the main factor which allows populism to flourish is lack of the sense of security of people. I think the populists can develop their ideas, their activities, can be very influential, can reach other and brighter audience only if they are able to present some measures which will allow, at least verbally, to counteract against some fears and problems which people have. From my point of view as a diplomat, I would like to diversify. This could the two approaches to populism. The one is the typical, let's say, not typical natural populism, which is generated internally in the countries, which is typical, normal, natural phenomenon, which is growing usually in democratic societies. There are a lot of different and difficult things, usually linked to the social policies of the countries, which are very difficult to be tackled with, particularly by the governments or people who wants to be engaged in resolving them. But it's also, and there is also the very good place and the space for the populists, because usually populists, they present very simple and very short answers and measures to be implemented to resolve some problems. But of course, the reality is completely different. If there is a problem which is existing for 20 years, it means that it's not so easy to resolve them. And but this is typical phenomenon of populism which appears in many democratic countries. But from my point of view, as a diplomat, the much more serious is the problem of the populism which is generated externally, as a tool which is used to influence political system of the other country. But this is the phenomenon which appeared recently, which we see the populism as a tool of the hybrid war. Used in the same way as used in order to destabilize the internal situation in the other countries, and is generated and orchestrated by the other country. Sometimes it appears such activities are carried out by the other aggressor country using the good conditions which are in internal politics of the country, and sometimes is strictly and originally generated from abroad. And I think that if we talk about I don't want to take too long my flow, but if we talk about this, I think it would be very interesting, particularly for you people who who would like to deal with international policy, also to look at this from this point of view as a two different kinds of populism which we which we are facing now. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Now we're moving on to the part of the discussion where you can take a further stance, maybe ask your fellow panelists some questions, and our members of the Secretariat will also bring on their own questions. So if any of you would like to... Okay, so Mr. Wagner seems to have a question ready.
Thank you, thank you. It's not a question, it's the comment I would like to point to the ambassador's last remark about the external. The challenge in many situations, and this is not a new thing that external government or institutions are affecting others. That have been going on for decades. The challenge in that case is how do we seed it? How do we find it? How do we identify it? How much are we able to be aware of that influence actually is happening? So the strength of external factors influencing one political nation, one nation, etc., is often through the politicians in different ways, but also through media. And I believe in today's society, this is even more easy since we have the social media. And we saw the latest remark from Mr. Zuckerberg now after the election in the US, that they will also take away their internal kind of hinder or control of what we are stating on social media. Now it's up to me to make a remark that this is my comment. And when this is happening, not to an editorial board in the newspaper, etc., it's even more challenging to be aware of the influence coming from abroad into our society. So that was just a comment for me to the last remark from the ambassador.
Thank you, Mr. Wagner. I'd like to say that it's interesting to see how over the past 10 years we've seen these social media organizations moving in two directions. Firstly, towards increasing security and controls over what can be said on media, and now a kind of reversal of this. If either other panelists would like to comment on this.
I mean, just from the perspective of social media, I'd be curious to see what you all think. Your generation that have lived their lives in an open and transparent way, in a way that I never did. And I would think my honored compatriots here on the panel are about the same age as me, perhaps. So I would be interested in what you think about social media and the information you see. Do you think it's too believable? Do you think there's a tendency to go for those shorter statements, those easy answers to problems, instead of spending the time to look at real deep analysis to say what exactly is the truth? I think we have a real challenge in our current world about finding what the truth is. And so I would be interested in hearing some of your comments and your insights about this from where you stand. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Holbrook, for that. And I think now is the opportunity to essentially open the floor in a way to our delegates and to give them the opportunity to ask your questions. So we have a new system called Slido, where it gives you the opportunity to submit any questions you may have to our speakers and the Secretariat. So on your screens right now, you'll be able to see a QR code. You can scan this on your phones or use the link slido.com and enter the passcode. And through there, you can enter your questions you may have to any of our speakers, and you can also vote for the best questions you like. And the most voted questions will essentially be chosen to be asked. Now, we give the floor to Danai that has a question to the speakers.
Hi, everyone. I think until our delegates submit their questions, I have one of my own. In light of this topic, and as you mentioned, the very important role of social media in today's society and the way that news spread, I'd like to ask for our panelists' opinion on the role of media desensitization and whether or not media, essentially, and how people are exposed to news nowadays has trumped over their core notions of morality and ethics, especially pertaining to policies and legislations. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on this topic.
I'll go ahead since neither of my other panelists are jumping in on this. If I understood your question, the main thrust was how this media desensitization happens and how it might affect policy thinking about legislative decision making in a society. Is that?
I think, yes, it also pertains to that, but also in the way that people and societies and citizens react to the events that are happening in our world, and because we have seen decline in people's participation in politics, and especially youth engagement has been declining, and I think desensitization is also a reason, since we're on the topic of authoritarian parties rising, whether or not the desensitization plays a role in the rise of authoritarian parties because of the fact that people's core notions of morality, right or wrong, and ethics have become demuralated in a way.
Thank you. Thanks for clarifying that. I mean, I do think from the UN's perspective, it's very clear that there's a need to reach out to younger people, and that there is this disaffectation, this growing lack of confidence, for want of a better word, in politicians and leaders globally. And I think that's a real issue. I'm not a politician, as I said, but for global multilateralism, it's a problem if a good chunk of society doesn't see themselves there and doesn't see a reason for them to care because of these mixed messages that are coming in, because they don't know if they can affect change, because of everything they're seeing on social media, frankly. I mean, I think it's been a priority from our perspective to really reach out to younger people and try to design our programming in a way that will catch attention. You know, you're not going to show up if it's not an issue that you don't care about. I mean, here at the UN in Cyprus, we've actually done a lot more with working on the environment because we know it is something that younger people care about. So really trying to craft programs that capture attention in a way that make it understood that this is, you know, there's a phrase about, you know, the world will be yours, or, you know, you need to make your voice heard. I actually disagree with that. I think the world is yours now. You know, now is the time for you to look around. By the time you're my age, it's, you know, it's a bit too late for you to get involved and have your voices heard. So just to say that, but also say that the challenge I see for social media, and I'd like to hear the views of my fellow panelists, is that it goes so quickly that to take a minute to vet a fact or check to see what's the case or to research, the world is moving so fast that you don't oftentimes do that. And so I think that's a big challenge that we haven't quite cracked yet. So this disaffectation, you're being bombarded with messaging all the time, might lead you to turn off a bit when really you should be turning on and doing more and thinking more about what you're reading. Thanks.
So we have an overwhelming amount of 56 questions. But the most voted and most popular one has been, does the panel believe populism is more of a threat to democracy or an indication of the global population's frustration with current events? Does the panel believe populism is more of a threat to democracy or an indication of global population's frustration with current events?
May I try to start on this? It's very, first of all, it's a very good question. I need to start and think at the same time. One element I would like to say, as mentioned now from Sherry, what's the element of the short, pinpointed, highlighted, etc. And where do we find the space for creating that discussions and reading into that young people today, I think they are disengaged from political systems that do not listen to them. And then bringing back to what Sherry said, you know, what are you engaged in? And I participated this summer myself in the UN buffer zone for the environmental day that took place at the Ledra Palace. And that was a lot of youngsters and the involvement from the committees representing the two communities. I found that the engagement was amazing. But you know, I believe strongly in creating those venues, those events where you have the ability to both listen to each other, reflect together, and at the time we need to learn to listen to each other and respect the differences. And I think that could be an area where everybody, you know, you're a youngster or middle-aged or older, have the time to reflect and engage together. But then we need to learn the skills of dare to understand and find the time to reflect. So with the strength of the social media, I believe strongly events like you are creating here today that need to be more created, and it need to be followed up by a strong support as institutions like the UN and others are when they are present, and encourage events like this to take place, to try to find the time to have good reflections and not just 100 times pinpoint with the media show.
Thank you so much, Mr. Walker. And if I can draw a link to what so Mr. We would like to take a...
If I may react to the question and your comments regarding this perception of or the role which can play populism in a democracy, how can affect negatively the democracy as I understood this. So of course there is such a risk like this, and I think that there is a risk which we are confronting all over the world. There are places which are more exposed to these populist activities and those where the situation is different. But I think that's what we need to counteract, is particularly our reaction towards the disinformation. And now we are touching the problem which was mentioned before, I mean the social media and the negative role of the social media. The disinformation is one of the most important topics which the European Commission would like to tackle with now. As you know, Poland has taken over the presidency in the European Union at the beginning of this year. We've been guiding European Union for the 6 months. We will finish at 6 and in June, and we decided to concentrate on some particular priorities. The main task for us and our motto of our presidency is the security Europe, because as you know, we are facing a lot of different challenges in this turbulent war, this extremely difficult international situation. But not only, there are a lot of demanding situation and a lot of challenges to be faced also in the European Union. So we wanted to diversify this approach of the European Union and the European Commission at us as a presidency towards the common security of the European nations, diversifying this in 7 dimensions of the security. One is of course this external security. The second one is internal security. There is also economic, energy, health and food. And the last one is information. information as a kind of security which we in this environment which we have to live, which we would like to live being be safe and being prepared for all difficulties which can happen. And of course, one of these very influential and affecting us in a very bad way is disinformation. So there is a role also for the official institutions, for the public administration also to tackle with this challenge. And this not, and I know there is a big discussion, which started in an intensive discussion, which started decades ago when there were first regulations which were implemented by some regulatory bodies regarding internet. I know how big rumor it created, how many people protested, how many different and difficult moments were during this discussion, among particularly and among the representatives of the different groups in the different societies of the European Union. But I think that after this experience, which we have gathered over the last 2 decades, when we really deal with the internet, with the social media, we should consider the real regulations which will in some way regulate and refer to this challenge and how to use internet, how to use social media, and how to responsibly be engaged in this way of the communication, because this again refers also to populism and the role of the populism in a democratic country.
Thank you so much to our panelists for their brilliant insights on this topic. I really liked how all of you talked about both the positives and negatives of social media, and I also like to think that, as Mr. Vagar said, that organizations such as MEDIMUN, which truly believe in the power of communication, in allowing us young people to become more involved, can guide us to use social media in a better way for us to take the future into our hands right now, as Ms. Holbrook said. As the conversation has moved towards closer to how the younger generation is turning its back on politics, I think we'd like to move on to this topic now. So, if we could hear Mr. Vagar's stance on why the younger generation is turning its back on politics and politicians. Mr. Vagar, we can't hear you.
Sorry, I muted myself there. You can hear me now? Yes, good. Thank you so much. Let me go back to what I used in my last answer when I said that young people are not disengaged from politics. They are disengaged from political systems that do not listen to them. And I like to do a pinpoint an element there, shifting trust in institutions. I use in a lot of my trainings, I use a model developed by an Australian psychologist called David Rock, and that is the SCAR framework. And that SCAR framework, that is related to different elements, not going into all of them, but all of these leads to either threat or reward. So young people respond to status and certainty and fairness. So that model have these elements into the SCAR as status, certainty and fairness, and which the traditional political systems maybe fail to provide. So then it's back to the lack of transparent communication, and that creates a perceived lack of agency leading to disengagement. And how do we try to approach that? I believe we need to give youth a voice rather than dictating terms. And when you see people in the political leadership around, Maybe they have, you need to engage the younger generation and on the terms that are attractive to them, and not just follow the way it is in my generation and the older ones. We all need to adapt and take on what's coming in from the younger one, and you can like or dislike it. The youngsters are always doing wrong, as have been said for generations. But to be able to find the right ways that is attractive to them, I think that is the way to engage them in being involved in politics. That was my immediate thought on this.
Thank you so much. If we can now move on to Ms. Holbrook.
Thanks very much. I think I touched on this a little bit already. I just wanted to flag the Youth Peace and Security Resolution that was passed in 2015, which to me doesn't seem like that long ago, but that's a full decade. And I'm looking around the room wondering how old you guys were in 2015. That resolution, for the first time, recognized at a global level by the United Nations that young people had a key and critical role in international peace and security. And I think it bears repeating and emphasizing today. If you're not familiar with the resolution and the programs that we put behind it, please look it up. I'm someone who's worked around the world in conflict situations, and what you see, tragically, is that there are young people that don't have jobs, don't have security. I think this goes to the ambassador's point earlier. If there's a fear about the future and a lack of security, then it's very difficult for you to feel confident in the institutions that are there if everything's falling apart. So I think this also goes to the first speaker's comment on this as well. If there's not a belief in the institutions, why would you, as young people, want to have anything to do with it? I think there is hopeful signs. I think more and more younger people in all areas of life, in particular I mentioned the environment and climate change, are raising their voices and saying to people of my generation, hey, we don't like what you've done around the world. That's not good enough. We want change. We want something better. And fair enough. Hold your leaderships accountable and understand that you do have the power to do that. You all are about to be new voters. Don't think it's not worthwhile getting out there and casting a ballot, because it is. You're a powerful demographic. Thank you.
Before we move on to Mr. Szymanowski, I'd like to ask a question to Ms. Holbrook. Seeing as how you mentioned how you see that many young people want to change what has been done by the previous generation, I'd like to say that I think throughout history this has been a repeating cycle, that every generation would like to change what the previous has done. So it's very natural, and I think that today we're given opportunities, more opportunities than ever to do so. Whether it be social media or events such as this one. And I'd like to know if you think what many countries are going to do now with lowering the voting age has been done throughout Europe, and as Mr. President Nikos mentioned yesterday, he's doing in Cyprus, lowering it to the age of 17. If this is you feel a very good way to move forward and move closer to young people taking this initiative.
Thank you for the question. I mean, from the perspective of the UN, a decision on voting age is, of course, up to every country's decision. But I will say this: from my personal experience, I actually graduated high school when I was 16, and moved out, got a job, and then went to university. And I felt a little bit frustrated that I had to wait 2 additional years as I was out there adulting effectively until I could vote, until I could do things. And so from my personal experience, I'm quite supportive of the idea of dropping it down, just because I think there would have been things that I wanted to have my voice heard where I was. Decisions, policy decisions that affected how I was living, and I didn't get that chance. So, thank you.
Thank you so much. If we can now hear Mr. Shabanovsky's position on this topic.
Thank you very much. I fully agree with you. You know, it's, I just wanted to add that I don't think so. I don't have this impression that, you know, the young people, the young generations really turning back to the policy. When I'm watching in you, there are so many young people here interested, particularly in the policy, like in the politics, international politics. You are interested in international problems. You came here just, you know, to participate in such event, and I think it is normal that not all young people are always interested and engaged in the politics, because this is always the fraction of the society, even a fraction of the young generations, which is more or want to be more concentrated on the social issues, on the politics, or some social problems. Even the more teeny fraction is dedicated as much to this problem that decides to deal with the politics professionally. It is, I think, typical for every generation. I think what I can say from the experience of my country and also of my personal experience. As you know, Poland was the country which was the satellite country of the Soviet Union for the almost 50 years after the World War II. We, of course, regained independence after 123 years after after World War I. Then we had a quite good flourishing period of our country but only for 20 years. And then came the Second World War, and we again lost our let's say our independence, or not in this particular way that was no Poland existing on the map, but we were deeply dominated and influenced by the Soviet Union. And it was this atmosphere, this sense of this lack of the security, these political problems which we had to face, mobilized, was very well mobilizing, particularly for every generation, for older generation, also for the young generations, from this period when Poland had to exist under the domination under the dominance of the other country, and it encouraged people. I just wanted to say, I just wanted to tell you about this example, because I wanted to explain that the very important role in this process of the encouragement of the young people is created by the conditions which those young generations have to live in. If their conditions are difficult, if more people have these common political problems and which have to be faced by them, the more young people are engaged, because they are more influenced by the discussions, they are more influenced by the problems which appear on the daily agenda, and they want and they more discuss it at house, in their families, and on many occasions when they meet their colleagues and friends. If you live in a relatively well-organized democratic society and in a democratic country, people are more oriented towards their professional careers, towards their professional goals, which they would like to achieve in the professional in the education, in the period of the when they are at the universities, in the period when they are at work, and they are less concentrating on the political issues. And I think this is a normal phenomenon which appears in every society. That people are more devoted to deal with the politics, particularly younger generation, when they have to when they have to resolve some political problems. Thank you.
Thank you for that. We'll now go on back to the crowd and the delegates, what they have to say. A bit more related, the most related question we have on youth participation and engagement in politics, or at least about the educational system and its role that it has on young people. We have a question with 36 votes, which is, considering our educational system does not often educate us adequately on such topics, what is the proper approach to educate ourselves as young people?
So, would any of our panelists like to take on this question?
Could you repeat the question once again, please?
Of course, of course. Yes. I think it's the room as well. So the question we have is, considering our educational system does not often educate us adequately on such topics, what is the proper approach to educate ourselves as young people? So basically, young people the point here is that as young people we're not adequately educated from our educational system, and what can we do independently, and what is our approach on educating ourselves?
May I start on this question? I see the nod there. My personal story, I came to Cyprus in 2015 and lived there 1 year with a gap year with my whole family. My wife and I, we volunteered working for a peace organization working in a buffer zone named Peace Players. Their work in Cyprus, in Israel, in Northern Ireland, in South Africa, in the inner cities in the United States, it's to bridge people living in divided areas. Part of that work that led to, when we came home, we started our own NGO. And the name of that NGO is Sport for Understanding, and that leads me to your question. Where could we go? In the educational systems that we find most places, the topics are what we are all engaged in, either from the UN as an ambassador or me as an independent consultant. You know, we are working with people to help them to advance their communication skills. It's in the simple elements of asking good questions, being curious, positively curious to each other, listen to each other, reframe questions, use what I call the human skills to try to understand instead of divide. And that is part of what we are doing in the NGO we are running. We are bridging people across Europe. And we are using we are applying money from the EU, and they have a huge budget in their peace and reconciliation budget. That is on the purpose of what you are doing here today in Cyprus, taking part of this model UN. It's to bridge people, it's to meet people, it's to get to know them, it's to have fun together, it's to sit down and talk, have some serious talks about topics, have some fun topics about other topics. You know, it's about engaging, getting to know people, and the way you do this is by advancing your communication skills. And this is something we highlight in what we do in the Sport for Understanding. People are doing their sports, and we teach them basic communication skills, basic communication and conflict resolution skills. And I think these kind of institutions need to be taken into the formal education and raise an awareness that this is important skills. And this is why I emphasize the name human skills and not the word that is often used as soft skills, because that could be misunderstood as not so important skills. So that was my contribution to this question.
Thank you so much, Mr. Wager. And I would like to say how in such institutions such as MEDIMUN, where as Cyprus living in 2025, we may not have that urgency as people in Poland had to speak out, because there was a lack of democracy there, which forced people into becoming more mobilized. Taking the position of another country where there may be more direct pressing issues such as a lack of democracy may challenge each individual in here to take on this role through putting themselves into other people's shoes who may be living far away from them in the world. To that end, would any of our other panelists like to talk about this?
Just on the question of educational systems, including those here on the island, I think we definitely believe that it's incredibly important to look at how history is taught. That's true here, it's true everywhere there's been a conflict, because it does mean you're taught in a certain way that may not be reflective of how different groups or communities see history or see events of the past decades. And I think the Security Council with respect to Cyprus has been unanimous for years on this point, the importance of education. During times when the Security Council has not been unanimous about many things, they have been unanimous on this point, and so I think that just bears repeating. How can you educate yourselves? I think the positive thing about social media and the internet is that the resources are at your fingertips. And so if you believe that your school's curriculum is not perhaps preparing you in a certain way or in a way you're looking for, you do have the resources that you can look to. And I would encourage you to do so. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Mr. Szymanowski, would you like to add something yourselves?
Let me just only add, again, mentioning the experience of Poland after the very important period of our history, after of course the Second War, when you know the root causes of the Second War, Poland was attacked by Germany. Then it was a massive extermination and Holocaust, but mostly concentrated on Polish territories where the German Nazi camps, where concentration camps were established, and it was the massive extermination of people, and it was then we had this almost 50 years of the under the Soviet Union control, and then appeared after the collapse of the communism. There appeared the period of the new modern the period when the moment when Poland has to face all of these challenges of the modern and democratic country. And among them, of course, was how to create the new and reformed the education system of the country. Why it was so important? Because we had to, stop and completely change and transform the system, which was deeply concentrated on ideological ideological goals of the authorities. That's how it worked in an authoritarian country. That, of course, the school and education was the one of the most important parts of this system, because, of course, the authorities, the regime authorities, they were concentrating particularly on this, how to affect the new generations and prepare them for this acceptance of the country, which is ruled by one party in non-democratic way. That was the one challenge. Another challenge was, of course, how to organize in a new, modern way our relations with our neighboring country, particularly with Germany. With Germany, which we had a very difficult period of our history, which were of course, the Second World War. And we were discussing, we were trying to, to launch some educational reforms which were extremely needed. It was the beginning of 90s. But one of the most important thing, which was, and one of the most important model which we wanted, what our government wanted to, decided to implement, was the model which was before carried out between Germany and France after the World War II, because it was the first conditions in order to achieve the reconciliation between two countries. They decided, and they decided to organize the common commissions, which were dedicated only to prepare the books for history, which will tackle with the problems which those countries had among them in their histories, in this way, which will be acceptable for both of them, which will be useful for the new generations in this way to avoid the same problems and mistakes. So, and they succeeded, of course. I think the both sides of these countries, Germany and France, after 2 decades and 3 decades, they evaluated those collaboration on the fields of the education as a very successful. So we decided also to follow the same model. Now we have the commissions which deal with the problems and prepare the common books of history for the Germans and the Polish students. And this is the only one way how we could prepare the new generations for the future. Particularly, we would like to how we can deal with the problems which are unsolved among our nations. And that only shows that some measures which were implemented worked, and how important is a way which we decide to implement.
Thank you so much. I think I have a question for our panelists.
Thank you so much for your answers. We have a very high-rated question pertaining to the last topic debated, which the delegates have been dying to get the answer to. The question is, to what extent do the panel speakers believe that the rise of populism in the USA will affect Europe? Very current question, I think. Very difficult to answer as well. So, do any of the panelists wish to?
Just as a slight reminder, I would like to urge the delegates to please upvote relevant questions. I mean upvote and vote relevant questions to what we're discussing, because some really good questions are being overshadowed and we have an overwhelming amount of questions, 178. So until we have time to get through most of them, please make sure you upload only relevant ones.
I think because it's a really difficult question to answer, I actually have another question for our panelists. Most of you mentioned the shifting perception of young voters and quote-unquote the priorities that they consider when voting for politicians. So in light of that, do you believe that third-party or independent candidates have become more appealing to young voters than traditional politicians, given, as you mentioned, their disappointment in the current system in place?
As far as disillusionment with politics as it currently stands and the state of the world, which is, putting it mildly, challenging right now, I could see how independent candidates would be attractive to younger voters. I mean, you all have a prime example here with the election of Phidias for the member of European Parliament. I think his campaign was a classic example of disillusionment with current party politics as it stands, and fair enough. You know, if you voted with your votes and you made your will be heard. So I think that's natural. And in mature, sort of healthy democracies, you do see this. You see rise of different candidates or parties around certain issues. So the Green parties around the world are an example of this, of parties that want to make certain change in certain areas outside of what might be a classic divide between left and right wing. But of course the entrenched political parties have their reasons to want to stay dominant, which of course I can't comment upon. But I think this is something that you see and you witness in many different places. I mean, I think the ambassador can comment more on the situation in the EU. But I see it in the places that I've worked. So trying to get people elected that are independent or really going around for a certain particular issue. So I think we do see that. Thanks.
May I comment on that?
Yes, of course.
I totally agree with what was said, and I think on particular issues, I think that is the independent candidates and the example that was shown now from happening in Cyprus last year with the EU election. At the same time, when those individualists are coming into a position that they are maybe governing, they, in how I have seen it, is coming into the same situation as the party they have left earlier. Because when you are need to come into a situation where you have to govern, you have to act maybe differently than you are able to do as this individual that have maybe a few topics, one or maybe a few topics that you put on the table. So it is starting as a revolution, but I also see that they are quite fast coming back into the norm of how you see political systems are working. And wasn't it President Macron from France that was in a former party, started his own and was elected quite immediately from this new party. And I don't know, is he very different from what he was when he was the Minister of Finance and what he later became as the President? Just a question. I think it's easy to get started and then you come back into the normal political system again.
Thank you, Mr. Wager. As we are running out of time, I would like to make our closing remarks and thank our panelists, Mr. Wager, Mr. Ambassador Shizafanowski, and Ms. Holbrook. Personally speaking, it's been a very interesting and inspiring conversation, and I hope our delegates, especially those thinking of going into politics or jobs such as in the UN, could take a lot from this. We would like to present you with some small gifts from the Secretariat. And Mr. Wager, we have not forgotten you. It will be safely kept until you return to the island.
If I may, just thank you all for coming out on a Saturday and spending your weekend to talk with us and listen to us. This has been really interesting, and I hope you found it as well. So thank you to everybody.
Also, my words of gratitude. Thank you very much for this invitation, for being with us. I know this is Saturday, and really, I do hope that the future is in a good hands. After when I see you, so many people gathering here, interested in this, what we, the representatives of the a little bit older generations, would like to share with you. So thank you very much once for your invitation and good luck in your professional career. Thank you.